Surely theory crafting is better than reps, Myra.
Nah, reps, man.
This week on Battlechads. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Battlechads. I'm Josh, and I'm joined by one of my co-hosts, Dan. Hi, Dan.
Hello.
And we've got we've got a special guest with us who's been on before. Myra, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Good to be back. Thanks for having me, and let's have a good one.
Yeah. I mean, we really enjoyed the last one you're on. So I was, when Dan said you were coming back on, I was super excited because we had a really good conversation last time, and I think this episode is going to be a really good conversation because we're talking about theory crafting and reps in a sort of verses, but I think we might conclude in you need a bit of both, but we'll see how the conversation goes. But before we move on to that, Myra, you've had a very, very intense and interesting season. Do you just want to talk us about your escapades? Maybe show off a little bit of bling on the camera?
Yeah, so basically my season started off with the standard RC where I came one win short of requalifying to the PT. I was just super hungry, so I decided to make a full-on trip this season and went to Vegas for the PTQ, as well as joining a PT team and joining their testing house so I can jam limited and standard, which leads to my grand finale of the trip of attending Spotlight Chiba, which is held in Japan. 2.3k players, standard GP, top 8 qualifies to the PT, and unfortunately, I came short. I came top 32 with 11-3-1 record, but I did get these bling. So that's a non-foil one, and that's the foil one.
So that's about 16 grand worth of prizes for top 32 in. That is...
So yeah, top 128 players get this, and there's only 128 of them in the world.
And that was only through Spotlight Chiba?
Yeah, and then PT gave away a similar one, but in English, so it's like slightly different.
Yeah. So, I'm a sucker. We had this conversation before. I'm a sucker for Japanese cards. I'm currently trying to get one of my decks fully Japanese. But for you, we said before, you don't see the appeal of it. But I guess for you, looking at Japanese language is like just words. Where for me, it's like beautiful squiggles that I really want my decks to be in.
I mean, top 32 in Tube is insane as well, and it's sort of nice to have that prize to the wrap up, whether you decide to sell it or sit on it for a few years. Just like look back and say, I won that. That's mine.
It's basically holding art.
Super happy to have it back. Like a tournament, a GP back is great in itself, but then GP back in Japan, oh my god, it was like insane. So many people that you don't see often, like come back and play Magic, because like there's a lot of talk about like, oh, all the events are so American centric. Oh, there's only a few European events, but like Asian events, that's like huge for everyone in Asia. So it was really nice.
I would love to go to Japan. It's on my bucket list. I said on my 30th birthday I'll be in Japan, and that didn't happen. I was actually in the Four Top Doken witness on my 30th birthday, Dan. And then I've said, right, when I'm 40, because that's I'm looking at 40 now. I'm my knees are going, my back's going. I'm looking at 40. I'm gonna be in Japan for my 40th. I swear it. I promise myself.
How many years away are
you around?
5 years. I'm 35 now, so 5 years.
You are old.
I am old, mate.
Very old.
Put the miles in.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
just on the on the Japanese meta, because I look at like deck lists from MTG Goldfish, MTG Top 8, MTGDecks.net. That's sort of the resources that I kind of look at. I always look at Japanese tournaments and think, what absolute spicy brews are they coming up with? Because they always I see Japanese metas and I just think like the wild. Like you'll see, oh, this is Goryo's Vengeance, and I'll be like, wait a second, that's not Goryo's Vengeance, that's something completely different. What's going on? How was that for you? Like, how was the meta over there for the standard tournament?
Yeah, so standard in general for this past set, right? So a few sets since Tarkir has been really compressed around like the cutter decks. And like you saw at the PT, cutter had like 40% meta share. That's like unheard of, like insane. And the top 8, of course, had 4 color decks and 4 mono red decks.
Yeah.
So it's like you'd expect the meta to condense down around Cutter, Red, and Omni, which were the top 3 decks. But like Japan, it being a 2.3k player GP, and a GP being an open event, it was a super nice meta to play. Like super not balanced, but lots of different decks, lots of shares, and like Cutter was only like 20%. It's still a lot, but like compared to the 40.
Yeah, we love I love like open tournaments like that where anyone can rock up. Everyone from I've just come out for a day out all the way to I want to win this kind of thing, and it's really it's really interesting to see. It's like Dan, that tournament we went to in Manchester a couple of weeks ago. It was a really chilled out sort of.
Yeah, it was nice. It was, even though it was like Comprel, it was just. It was relaxed. People were there. They were playing sort of like their favorite decks, but still a good deck, and they were just having a good time. People wasn't like sweating it as much. They were sharing what cards they were playing, showing other people the deck lists. It was nice, and we still played for prizes. So.
Yeah. So on the Battle Chad sort of side, or the Chad Magic sort of side, last weekend we had a RCQ weekend in Just Play in Liverpool. Shout out Richie, and Just Play, a great store in Liverpool. If you're in the area, definitely check it out. And so there was 3 RCQs, and we had 2 out the 3. We had Chad Magic team members qualify. Me and unfortunately Jack killed me in the finals of one, and then Stefanos had he didn't need to play his finals because the person who he was against in the finals already qualified, so it just got an immediate pass down. And then Mark, what's his name? Maciek, who qualified on the Sunday with good old Glorious Vengeance. So me and Maciek were talking heavily on that deck, because I'm on that deck too. Actually, I'm loving Glorious Vengeance at the moment. It's so much fun. So yeah, we've had a busy weekend. Season's coming to an end, or near enough.
And then that'll be out of it. Yeah,
I've got one more RCQ to give it a go at, and then if not, then I'm tempted just to go do some last chance qualifiers. I really fancy the trip, especially from what Myra was saying.
Antwerp is a beautiful place, to be fair.
Yeah, I've never been.
Really nice place.
Yeah, so how are we feeling on, just a quick one on Modern at the moment, guys? How are we feeling on Modern?
So, I have just finished Living End. The biggest pain in the backside for me was picking up 4 copies of Force and Negation.
Yeah, that's going to
I finally managed to get them, so that deck is sorted now. I've been chewing George's ear off on how to play the deck and get better with it. And then I was playing some leagues on Magic Online last week before, with Neoform, and I really like the deck. So I've because the crossover from Neoform's Living End isn't that bad. Like, you've got the lands, which are in both anyway, so a lot of the expenses just in like the Galters and the Atraxes. So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna pick it up. So I've just randomly bought most of Neoform, in the off chance that I might play it in Cardiff for the Mega Modern. We'll see. But I'm really enjoying it though. It's fun. I like Modern.
A Neoform is a weird deck. I'm not sure I actually like the deck in terms of winning, like how winning it is. But
you can just spike someone on turn 2. That's what I like most about it.
I think if you're expecting heavy Boros, heavy Blink deck sort of thing, then I think you're all right for it. How about you, Myra? How you feeling now? The standard sort of piece is over. Are you still on your Mox Opal piles, or?
Well, to be completely honest, I've just been so standard play, like so focused on standard. I'm just getting back into it. I've got a few Modern tournaments coming up. Like, I've got the Impact Return at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Which is like a Spanish event.
Yeah.
Kind of like Mega Modern.
Yeah.
And I have, of course, Mega Modern Cardiff coming up. So I'm getting back into Modern, especially since I'm also going to be helping Worldly Council test for the PT.
Yes.
Which is in Atlanta in the end of September.
Yeah.
Which is also Modern. So, testing is starting to kick off. We haven't started just yet. It's probably going to start next Monday or so. But personally, I really like the spot Modern is in right now. And although I like the Mox Opal decks, although I like these unfair decks, right now I just feel like the fair decks have just so much, how should I say, like equity to it. Like
Yes.
Blink Splashing Blue it's just an incredible deck.
Yeah.
I personally really like it, and also Boros, always a solid deck, and my pet deck of mine, Eldrazi Ramp, also a beautiful deck. So I'm probably gonna get started with like those deck, and if I don't like how they feel, I might go back to exploring some Mox Opal shells. But yeah, overall, like a lot of powerful things can be done at the moment, and just discovering the best shells seems like the way to go at the moment.
I think Modern is in a place right now where you can find a powerful shell, but because there's so much variety in Modern right now, I feel like you could find a powerful shell where you connect with, and then you can really invest in that shell, and you can really win with it. But before, I guess gone is the time when Modern is like a one deck format where your Boros Energy is the thing to do, or either Boros Energy or Belcher was the thing to do. If you're not doing any of them two, then you're sort of at a disadvantage. But I feel like Modern now is just so wide open, and you see different decks winning different challenges. You see a varied top eight. It seems actually like a really great meta at the moment. It's almost.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
It reminds me a bit of how varied the Pauper meta is at the moment. Like Pauper's so wide open at the moment. Like you can play your pet deck and pretty much win. And I think with Modern, as long as your pet deck is powerful and it's got some of the sort of Modern staples in it, then you can do really well, I think.
So you're saying that I can just rock up to an RCQ with Infect and win?
No, it has to be a good deck.
Okay.
Although I did see an RCQ win, I'm sure, with the Tifa list, but I'm pretty sure that's just like an all-in landfall deck rather than an Infect.
Yeah.
So Myra, just before we move on, then I just want to talk about sort of the effects, or your opinions on the effects of Standard after the ban-ins. Like, do you think it was too much? Do you think it was enough? Do you think it was just right? Like, do you think what's your how's the meta settled in Standard for you?
Yeah, so I think to begin with, I'll just talk about my experience with the previous Standard meta pre-bans.
Yep.
I think we all know Corey Steelcutter was just an incredible card. It was insane. It was probably like a modern deck in Standard.
Yeah.
And I agree. I really think the deck is powerful. I really think the versatility and the proactivity was just through the roof. Though, me personally, I decided to not play the deck despite having reps and despite, testing with a pro level team and coming to a consensus. I still didn't. So, firstly, I didn't like the play style, like the play patterns of the deck, as in like it's consistent, but there are also like fail rates to the deck that I didn't like. Like the mana base is not great. Because the mana base is bad, you needed to play like a lot of lands and still play like 8 cantrips.
Yeah.
So there's like I personally flooded a lot. So, and also I thought the deck was great, but I just didn't think it was like a one deck format for me to need to play Corey.
Yeah.
So I opted with Omni, which I felt really comfortable with. It was like a combo deck with some mid-range elements. I can, steer the game in the way I want to because my opponent had to respect the combo.
Yeah.
And just generally very solid, proactive while also being reactive against Corey. So I really like the deck.
Yeah.
And then the bans hit, right? So the Corey itself went, this town went, the red cards went, and
Every
then
red card ever. Every red card got banned.
and Hopeless Nightmare and the Abuelos went. So, me personally, I think those bans were probably spot on.
Yeah.
I probably would have banned Manifold Mouse over Heartfire Hero, just because like Heartfire was really good outside of red as well. Like it was good in the Leyline deck.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't know, hitting the Leyline deck might have just not been necessary. But like, and the fact that Heartfire Hero also like soft bans like Manifold Mouse kind of feels bad. So the red cards ban, it makes sense. Abuelos being banned also makes sense because it had a hard cap to what the format could do. Like every mid-range deck would be just feasted upon by the Omni deck. I personally would have just banned Omni itself and just had like, okay, if you want to Abuelos like Bahamut or Knights of the Round Table, like that's fine.
Yeah.
But I guess like, Omni's also a Foundations card, which is, again, 3-year rotation is really, really tedious and long. Puts strains on the format. But then again, like the Foundations 5-year legality is also like much worse than the 3-year rotation thing. So I think, Omni being a Foundations card really steered the direction to banning Abuelos, which is unfortunate, but I get. And back to the main topic. So what do I think of the post-ban meta? I think the clear winner was Demir, and that's being shown in the challenge results. Like it's everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't get me wrong. I played with Demir before, and I think it's an absolutely amazing deck. Proactive, can play a tempo game while playing a mid-range game. Very flexible, skill required, and I like it. But I just don't think it's like a one deck format. Like I feel like it's not ban worthy, and the reason why Demir is just doing so well is because the format is just so new. People just haven't like found the good aggro shells to combat blue black or a good mid-range shell to combat those aggressive decks, etc. So that's what I think.
A tempo shell like blue black mid range is going to be really good into like a format where people are trying different things, because it just has it's already solved. It's really efficient. All the removals really efficient. The answers are really efficient. The threats are really powerful. Yeah, I think you're right there. How are you feeling, Dan, with the red stuff?
I mean, well, I'm now a renowned combo gamer. Yep, you will never see me sleeving up a basic mountain ever again.
Oh no.
No, I'm joking. So for me, I agree with what Myra had said in the sense where Manifold Mouse seems to have been the right pick. Heartfight Hero, again, Leyline was one of my decks when we played the team trios back in Birmingham and Axion. That was the deck I was on. It was on Rakdos Leyline, and it was a good deck. It was fun. So that sort of getting banned sort of feels bad. But it's good to see the return of Red Green. Just sort of jamming out Innkeeper's Talents. It's running the Paw Patch Recruits. So it's sort of good to see it come back. And Question Druid's got a soft spot in my heart. Like 2 mana draw 3 cards isn't all that bad. So
no,
I'm fine with it. I've cried a lot, but I'm okay.
I am looking forward to getting stuck into Standard again, because I really enjoyed not the previous Standard season where I was playing it and testing it online quite a lot. I had an insane win rate with it online with the mid range. Like I'm really looking forward to get back into Standard. I love the swinginess of it. I love the fact that we want to draw more cards rather than like fetching and all that sort of stuff. I like the accountability of deck building over working out the numbers of your cards in your deck, because the top half of your deck is more important than the bottom half usually. I'm really looking forward to get back into Standard. I love that format. I think it being sort of 2 seasons on the trot will really help the format in paper as well. and really get people behind it, because I think, you know, the health of paper Magic back in the day was down to standard, and I think hopefully this being the big season to do it will give people more incentive to buy into it. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, also like outside of paper play too, like I think next week on the 20th there's gonna be the qualifier weekend on Arena, and that's gonna be standard as well. So I'll be really excited to just jamming standard, hoping to qualify for the Arena Championships. And like Dan, you mentioned you really like combo. Like there's still the VV Cauldron deck.
There is still that. It's caught my eye. However, VV and Cauldron is a bit expensive. It's just a little bit out of my price range anyway. After buying 4 Force Negations,
See,
I'm just going to be copying George again, and I'm probably just going to play Team Rotters to be honest, because it's not really got a very fast aggressive deck to punish it. So I feel like the format's slowed down a lot now. Like you don't see. Well, you're not going to see your Heartfire Heroes on turn 1 into Manifold Mouse, so you can sort of afford to make plays that could punish you, if that makes sense.
Does Team Rotter still have a combo in
it? Yes, it's got Get Out instead of Disdowning big enough. So it's blue instant counter that's return 1 or 2 target creatures and or enchantments you control to its own to its owner's hand.
Oh right, so you just loop it, return to your hand and then cast it. Yeah, with your hand. All right, okay. Cool. That's interesting because I hated playing against that deck, but it's a reasonable deck. George did really well with it. Yeah, super exciting. Super exciting.
It is. Look forward to it.
Any more comments, lads, before we move on standard, modern, the season? What we're looking forward to? Anything before we move on?
I'm looking forward to the Spotlight series and Liverpool being pioneer. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Oh. So
it's not confirmed. I just think it's gonna be.
I said this to my girlfriend, my partner. She's more than my girlfriend. We have a house and child together. But my partner, I said, the Spotlight series in Liverpool, and Liverpool is like my hometown. On the 30th or whatever it was, and she's like, "I'm going to this. This is happening. This is where I'm going. This is where I am this weekend." She goes, "Oh, it's my mum's birthday that weekend." I was like, "I don't care." Like, imagine if like a crystal convention or something came to Manchester, where you're from, and it's right there. And usually these events are in like, say, Europe or America or Japan or whatever, and it's on your hometown. There's no way I'm not going to that. Like this is no way. I will be there for that 100%. I'm actually trying to get shout out to some of my American friends. I'm trying to get them over for it. So show them some of the delights of Liverpool. Great night out.
We're going to see Myra though, right? No, the format's not been announced yet. It's not been announced yet. Which it's really weird because it's like it's 3 months away. Like people will need to start making travel plans sooner rather than later.
I think it'll be modern.
Don't know.
Because I've heard rumors of it being limited, like Edge of Eternity is limited.
Oh, okay, that'd be interesting.
I hope it's not.
I've
heard rumors that it's going to be Spider-Man limited because Spider-Man's out like the week before the Spotlight.
Oh, yeah.
I will be doing 100% side events all weekend with this because I've not played limited in ages.
Nope.
So before we move on to the main topic, I do want to announce our winner of the giveaway. So we were giving away the Apex sleeves from UltraPRO as well as the matching deck box. We are sponsored. Chad Magic is sponsored by UltraPRO, as is our friend in Rome on the other screen. We're all sponsored by in the UltraPRO family. UltraPRO are very good to us. They've given us free swag to give away. So we did a competition on the Twitter, Blue Sky, Discord, all that sort of stuff. And we have a winner. And when Dan told me the winner, I was super excited because this person is lovely. She always makes the attempt to come see me and say hello whenever we bump into each other. I love this person to bits. Got a lot of time with this person. Very, very good Magic player. Very, very accomplished Eldrazi Magic player. And the winner is, drumroll please, Kira from Honeycomb Hooves. Is that right? At Honeycomb Hooves on Twitter. So Kira, I am gonna. Well, I'll be messaging before this podcast is released. But you've won both of these. The sleeves and the deck box, and they will be on the way to you as soon as I can get to the post office, which will be probably tomorrow from the recording of this podcast. So hopefully, when this is released, they'll be already on the way to you. So well done, Kira, and thank you to you and everyone for the support for our little passion project that is battlechads. Yay! Honestly, I was made. I mean, there's a lot of people I wanted to win, but Kira, I was like super excited for Kira to win. Like, I was so happy. So well done, Kira.
Well, at first, when you was like Honeycomb Hoops, who's that? And then I went onto the Twitter page. It's like it's Kira. It's like, oh my god, it's Kira.
Yeah.
It was a very, very fast change of emotion.
Just one of those little like nice things, you know. Yeah, something good happening to somebody good. That's what I like.
Yeah.
So, main topic of the podcast: reps versus theory crafting. Now, I think it's important before we move on to this conversation what we mean by these things. So, Myra, do you want to tell us what we think we mean by, or what you would express reps to be?
Rep to me is like the most let's say a practical way of how most players practice. It's by gaining experience with the decks or the format by just playing, grinding events, grinding leagues, and grinding challenges. And through grinding the challenges and through grinding these events, you learn, how certain matchups will feel, how certain cards or certain core of the deck will function or not function. And basically, it's playing games in a tournament setting or in any setting to try and draw out conclusions as best as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Magic is a game of variance. It's also a game of imperfect information.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is, like, you don't know, unlike chess, you don't know what your opponent has in hand,
yeah,
or what they will draw, or what you will draw. So it's there's always going to be some sort of bias or some sort of just bias that will influence your decisions, and whether that's right or wrong will be depending on that case by case.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's essentially just playing games to draw out the conclusion that makes sense to you as efficiently as possible.
I think I wanna just pick up on something you said, and you said the word learning, and I think reps is only meaningful once you actually get learning from it. So, for example, I've learned that this card or this core or this functionality of the deck is not working, or it is working, but it's not working in certain spots. How can I improve the certain spots? And then maybe gaining an understanding of those situations you put yourself in through practically playing. And I think a lot of that comes down to also pattern recognition. Pattern recognition within the format, because I do think formats have different tempos, different patterns to them, and also more relevant or irrelevant interactions. Now, on the last podcast, we mentioned so Christian, who is one of who's sort of one of the heads with Wally. He's just recently he's a big standard person, but he recently got to modern, and even though he's aware of the priority, he wasn't aware that when you with the Flage sort of priority, when you like put your Flage into the bin from Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and then you can instantly cast it from your graveyard. He didn't realize there's no window, so he let it sort of resolve, and then I could have answered this, but I didn't, because I didn't give myself an opportunity to have priority, which is something more unique to modern being a format than probably what you wouldn't see in standard. So even though they're in the game rules, those patterns and those that sort of tempo of play is sort of unique to modern. I think that's the learning can be gained through playing that format as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Christian was very dead set on never playing modern. He hated the format, and
Yeah.
he's come in and he's picked up a deck, and he's gone to what 2, 3, well 4 RCQs in total now.
He loves it now. He's found
Including
his
the
deck.
3 on yeah, he loves it. Although mono white land destruction.
He does well with it though.
Yeah, he's done well with it.
Like I watched him play a game where he had against Brood Scale, and he got fully Emerald, and then he still won that game. Yeah, still won the game from Emerald.
Jeez.
So, Dan, I'm going to ask you the same question, but for theory crafting. What do you think, or what's the definition for you for theory crafting? What does it mean to you?
So the definition of theory crafting for me is you come up with an idea of what you want your cards to do, and you sort of have an understanding as to what cards already exist that do that. So, for example, Team Rotters, I know that Valley Flood Caller exists. I know that Storm Chaser's talent exists, and you know that there's sort of like a backup for this talent big enough that still exists in standard. So then you sort of take them key pieces of the cards, and you put them together, and you sort of build from that. It's like, what do I now want the deck to do in order for me to win as efficiently as possible? So there's great resources to help do that. There's YouTube videos, there's deck techs, mostly on battlechads, but you know, there's Scryfall, there's MTG Top 8, hundreds and hundreds of pages where you can go onto to sort of get ideas and to craft your own theory on how that deck should look, how your 75 should play out, and what your sort of like plan A through to Z is when you're trying to play that deck. That's it for me.
So I will add to this, and I will say that theory crafting is more of a conversationally based thing and more of a thought process rather than practicality, like Myra said with reps. And I think the benefit of this over just because reps is very much unless you're in that team setting like you were, Myra, with your team sort of your team house, where you can sort of amalgamate both aspects of theory crafting and reps. With if you're sat on your computer doing reps, it's pretty much a solo thing that you're sort of experiencing for yourself. You're experimenting with yourself. But with theory crafting, it involves other people, it involves conversation, and I think that means that you can get other people's opinions on something, other people's thought processes on something, and ultimately having a conversation on what's good, what's bad, this will work. Well, have you thought about this? I've actually not thought about that. That's a good point. Do you like this card? Do you not like this card? And that's the sort of that's what I would add to what you're saying, Dan. Would anyone disagree with that?
Oh, I'll be fine with that.
Me personally, I think what Josh mentioned was one aspect of theory crafting, and it's probably like the deeper end of theory crafting. Because in order for what you described to happen, one will need to be in a team setting that is, one, comfortable to be discussing ideas, and two, where you'd have to be comfortable in discussing ideas, but also like taking the other person's idea fully. That really requires like experience with other people. That really requires a team built on a strong, how should I say, like basis.
Yeah.
And again, and also like a lot of different things.
I think credibility,
motivation, and credibility.
Yeah.
And personally, I think even without these aspects, people and players are able to theory craft. And to me, I would say the definition that makes the most sense to me is theory crafting is reverse engineering. It's using existing theory, existing ideas or philosophies of the game. For example, clock permission or tempo decks are good against control decks.
Yeah.
Or aggro is going to be good against control decks because they'll go under them. Like it's like taking these theory, like in-game theories, core fundamental theories, amalgamating them with the actual format theory, whether that's pattern recognition, whether that's rules of engagement that the format will set on the cards being played due to, whether whether a certain card is very popular or more powerful than the others, or etc. And I think theory crafting is basically reverse engineering based on theory, whereas usually you would build up a deck or build up a strategy or build up an idea from getting reps. So theory crafting is basically doing that without reps. And I think the ideal position for a player to be in is that they have a good sense of theory to be able to theory craft, to have a good starting point, and then to build up that, or to build up that theory with strong evidence based off of reps.
Yeah. And I think so. There's always exceptions to the rules, and I think on our team particularly, you look at George, right? So George is massive theory crafter, massive brewer, massive into looking at cards, working things out. But he doesn't really have the reps because he doesn't play online. He plays limited events, and he's very successful, very consistent when he comes to play. And I think if Myra, you've said quite rightly, if you have a basic understanding, grasping of the patterns of the interactions in the game, and you reverse engineer it, you then get the brewers, you then get the the people who sit at home and think, oh, this could be good and this, but then that can fall apart when you actually go to do the repping and like put your theory to the test. So which I do think that I think George has found before. I think people have found before. It can also work in the reverse as well. So I've liked cards in the past because during my reps I've like, oh, this is really good in this specific situation that happened once or twice in my rep and it's so good. But then when you speak to people about it, you're like, no, that's bad. Like, you're biased because you've experienced that one or two. But imagine in paper you've got this in this form, this in this deck, really, really high represented. This interaction of this card will be very rare, if not nothing, and it will hurt you in the long run because that situation is so low and your resources to do that situation are too high to sort of justify inclusions of that card or include that play pattern, etc. So I think you're dead on. I think you need both. I think there's merits in leaning hard on one or the other, but I think the point I'm trying to get at, there's like almost pros and negatives to each one as well, specifically if you're relying on just one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, the way I view it is theory crafting and reps both have, like you said, pros and cons, and both have certain pitfalls that you would end up in if you do too much of one. For example, if you're heavily based on reps, you might not get the macro view as much because you're so successful with a certain deck, you don't realize, at these moments you shouldn't play these deck. At these moments you should play these deck, or you might be overly biased towards certain cards, certain sideboard plans because you've been so successful, and that sense of success is very biased and maybe logically not justifiable, like Josh mentioned. Whereas theory crafting will probably have something similar but on the opposite side of the coin, where it's like you're relying too much on the macro view and you don't have enough experience in differentiating the in-game decisions, the micro decisions of the game, or you're not able to adjust as easily to what your opponent is doing, or you're not able to, make certain decisions on the fly, and you're not able to back that up. And these pitfalls that one has will be basically help overcome by the other side. For example, what I said about the in-game decisions and the not being able to, adjust on the fly. If you have reps, that's gonna help you in doing that. Whereas for the having reps, if you have like the theory crafting aspect, you will also have the macro understanding of the game, or the format, so you're able to adjust while also having good reps. So yeah, it goes hand in hand, helps each other, helps overcome the cons of each other. But like you said, people tend to gear towards one over the other, because of limited resources, whether that's time, whether that's cards, whether that's motivation, which is a real thing, and whether that's community. Just not having a lot of players around you can severely, hurt or prevent you from fully immersing your experience in theory crafting or reps. So, yeah.
I'm like that a lot. Where so my go-to when I'm like testing out a new deck is obviously renting it on Magic Online, and then running a league, or even just like a few like friendly games if I'm just chatting wham with one of my friends in Discord, and then just playing a few games, so you can sort of understand. You could do sort of both at the same time in that sense, where you can understand how the deck works, you can learn the play patterns on it, and then if a play pattern doesn't work out, it's like, why does that not work out? And then you can make changes and you can discuss that with your friend. So we're all singing on the same hymn sheet. They both go sort of hand in hand. I think for me, I tend to drift more towards the practicality side of it, because that's just how my brain works. A lot of it takes into account how other people learn as well. So I can't learn just by sitting here reading like a guide or looking at a deck list. I have to sit down and play the deck out in front of me. So a lot of it can come down to that. And I just like shuffling cards as well. So I'll be sat here watching YouTube videos for ages, just goldfishing the same deck and playing out the turns. And it's like, okay, so I did this last time. What's it going to look like if I do something else? And so on and so forth. But
do you ever win when goldfishing?
no, I'm like 20 and like 0-20 at the minute at goldfishing. I can't win.
I
always scoop.
I was actually really interested in this, Dan, because you've gone from being a mono red aggro mage to full arc turning into full on combo. Not Glorious Vengeance, that's me. But your living end sort of decks and your neoform decks that you've arced into. So what's been like the process for you to like, ooh, I really like this? What sparked your interest in this? And then what was your process from putting down red cards to then doing fairly well with like a completely new arc? Because it's completely new. Like Living End sometimes doesn't feel like Magic the Gathering. Like it just doesn't. It feels like
it really does not.
It just doesn't feel like Magic the Gathering sometimes. So what's been like your process there? Has it been as you've said, or have you found it?
So I've not always been a red gamer. So many moons ago, when I was like sort of this big, my second ever GP was GP Manchester, and that was standard, and it was, I want to say, just after Shadows over Innistrad came out, and I was on a 4-color Cryptolith deck, so that was a combo deck, and I lost out 2 winnings for day 2 on that. So that sort of set my hatred for combo decks, because I was like, I can't play them, that's it, throw them away. So I just stopped playing combo decks and I picked up red cards and Infect. But it's like at the start of the year, it was sort of one of my goals to sort of arc away from just being known as the aggro guy in the team, and sort of tried to get back into combo, because it's always interested me. The Omni deck looked very, very appealing to me when we were testing for Bologna. But my thought process is that the mono red deck and the blue red cutter deck can just beat it out of nowhere. And sometimes if they don't have a lockdown, for example, then it can just be a no competition game.
Yeah.
So I think now is the right time, especially with its modern season, and there's not all outside of energy. Even then, energy is not really classed as an aggro deck. It's more of a mid range deck. or whether it is, I don't know. That could be a debate for another episode. But
You can have
because
the
there's
really
not
aggro
really,
starts, right?
it can have the aggro starts, yeah. But because there's not like your goblin guides, Wildly Cattle is seen as a mid-range creature now because it's got ley lines and big scary artifact dragons in. So because there's not really an aggro deck in Modern, then I've sort of gone back to the combo side of it. And you still win on turn 2 or turn 3 or turn 4, so maybe it's an aggro deck. I don't know.
So Myra, I wanna focus this conversation into two things, and I want to get your opinion on these. So how would you then do sort of using the sort of Theorycraft / rep sort of like space? How would you approach that in dealing with firstly picking a deck? Because I think deck selection is massive at the moment in Modern. So what are you sort of weighing up, or what you're thinking in terms of deck selection, whether it be theory or whether it be, I'm going to try the deck first and then see how it feels, or there's some decks I'm just not even going to bother trying because of the theory behind it. I'm just interested in what your thoughts are on deck selection in that sort of, this sort of sense.
Yeah, so in terms of specifically related to this Modern meta, I can't comment on exact examples or so because I'm just not
just generally.
playing.
So like in previous, so whether it be standard, whether it be modern, whether it be whatever format, you now have to focus on this format. My first problem now is to pick a deck. What is your, I guess, process into that?
But yeah, in general sense, I would usually go from the top down. I would say, rather than just saying, oh, this is the best deck, I'll play this deck. Of course, that's really important to get to know what, the format is up to.
Mm-hmm.
I go, okay, what is the best deck at the moment? And why is this the best deck? What pressure does this deck put on the format? And then depending on the pressure it puts on the format, I'll look at, okay, what deck will thrive under this pressure and what deck will fall apart under this pressure. I'll give you an example from the previous standard meta. The Cutter deck, so the Cutter, was such a strong pressure on to the format itself because it's a 2-mana artifact that generated so much value and so much board presence that dealing with Cutter 1-for-1 basis through cards like a Braid just didn't make sense because it would always leave back a token.
Mm-hmm.
So what this meant was decks that couldn't deal with artifacts or decks that relied on individual removal to fight Corey was just not viable. So what decks were these? In my eyes, these were, for example, the black mid-range decks that couldn't play Temporary Lockdown. These are like the Pixie style decks, especially like the Esper Pixie that couldn't deal with the Cutter, as well as couldn't really play Lockdown themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So what this meant was these decks, and also Demir mid-range to certain degrees. So what this meant was decks that are bad against Demir mid-range, Esper Pixie, black mid-range decks, all suddenly could come back because these decks just crumbled under the pressure Corey put. And then I'll look at the opposite. So what decks are thriving because Corey is so strong? So, and then I'll look at, this is what I call rules of engagement.
Okay.
What cards, what interactions, and what engagement towards Corey Steel Cutter did the format need to play to thrive? And that, in my eyes, were 2 cards: Temporary Lockdown and Magebane Lizard. So naturally, I was like, okay, what are the good Temporary Lockdown decks and what are the good Magebane Lizard decks? The Magebane Lizard decks were very easy. It was mono red and basically only mono red.
Yeah.
And I would say, okay, mono red is good. Would I play mono red? And then I'll probably look at all the matchup analysis. But while I'm doing these matchup analysis of okay, favored against this deck, not favored against this deck, even against this deck, I will compare it to core like the Izzet decks. Would playing this deck over Izzet make sense? So that what that question means to me, it would be like, okay, both are aggro decks. Which one is stronger in the head-to-head matchup? Which one is more versatile? And which one is higher power level? And for me, the matchup against Corey and Blue Red was even-ish. It was play draw dependent. But Blue Red had more options because it had extra color. So more sideboard options, more ability to win from behind with cards like Bounce Spell to regain tempo. So, okay, for me, it won't make sense playing a deck that is similar to the best deck and that has like different strengths to the best deck.
Yeah.
But in the end, will lack in certain key aspects compared to the best deck, whether that's explosiveness, stability, versatility. If it's just worse than the best deck and it's similar, I'll just pick the best deck. So then why did I choose Omni? It was because it was so different from what Izzet was doing in the format. And it's something it ticked the rules of engagement. It plays temporary lockdown in a good shell. So it plays the important card of the format in a good shell surrounding that card. And it does something, it also puts a pressure on the format due to how powerful the strategy is. So putting an Omni into play, you can't really beat that by like scale, you can't really outscale that game plan. So it's got that strength to it. And explosiveness is there. So that's how I basically choose my deck whenever I'm testing. Doesn't make sense playing this over the best deck. What is the best deck? What's the pressure point on the format? So what card is pressuring the format? What card is a good counter towards that pressure? What decks crumble under the pressure? What are the rules of engagement? And after ticking these boxes, if it's close, I'll probably gear towards one with more reps or one I feel more comfortable with. But I only do that after all those boxes are ticked. So it's kind of like bingo in a sense, right? Like you're ticking, you're seeing what boxes you can tick. And after a lot of boxes are ticked, then my personal opinion will come in. But, it's not a set in stone rule for everyone. There are going to be players that will gear towards playing a deck because they like the deck.
Yeah.
Or they're just better at playing certain archetype types over another. But for me, as someone that plays basically all the archetypes and that has no bias towards any archetype, that's how I choose my decks.
That's excellent. I like that. That's an excellent baseline. Identifying the strengths. Okay, what's good in the format? Okay, these cards are good in the format. Right, what deck utilizes these cards? And I think similar was seen in Modern with Wrathless Skies. I think Wrathless Skies is a really good card in Modern right now. So I think that's one of the reasons I sort of edged towards Gorios, because it had that similar power to, Omni had the really oppressive sort of like, I'm going to kill you out of nowhere. But also I can have this control aspect that is really good into the metagame as a whole. Any thoughts? Dan?
I like it.
Sweet.
I just picked the super duper fast decks. That's all.
Super duper fast decks. Go. I want to ask one more thing in the same ilk as what we're talking about, Theorycrafting, reps, all that sort of stuff. But how you apply the sort of, how do I word this? So the same sort of theology, not theology, that's a different thing. Same sort of like theory or same sort of thought process, but this time focused on sideboarding, mainly sideboard decisions, and then how you come up with utilizing that sideboard in a plan. Because to me, I'll contextualize it. So to me, you pick a sideboard, and then you discuss your in and out based on experience. But sideboarding is for me a lot of theory crafting, and a lot of oh, would you take out this because of this reason? Yeah, but you don't want to take that out because of this reason, and then a back and forth with the team, and that's where sort of my sort of sideboarding, I guess, inspiration comes from.
Yeah, so I think talking about Goryo's and Omni is a good starting point for this topic, because I think important thing about sideboard is I think there's two big aspects. One is, actually recognizing the micro of the format. So against this deck, what plan do you want to take? What card is good against the strategy? Against, these decks of the format, what card has the most overlap? These things you need to understand, or you can only understand if you have a strong knowledge or experience in the format.
Mm-hmm.
I think the second thing is also important, and that's the macro view of the game. And the way I see it is, whenever you're in a new format, whether that's new because it's a different format completely from standard to modern, or a new set has significantly impacted the metagame. For example, Tarkir in standard. For example, Modern Horizons in modern.
Mhm.
These will often reset the meta, right?
Mhm.
So you basically start off from a zero base again.
Yeah.
When these happen, I think the important thing is to be able to, like Josh said previously, have recognize patterns. And I think you do recognize patterns of a format based on analogy, based on previous experience of a similar deck. For example, if I was to start testing Gorios, I can probably have some certain ideas and experiences from the Omni deck and translate that to Gorios. So if Wrath of the Skies is a good card, why is it a good card? Because it probably answers, and I don't know if this is true or not because I haven't played Modern in a while, but Wrath of the Skies is probably good because it answers certain pressures of the format at a very cheap cost from behind.
Yeah.
Okay, so if Wrath of the Skies is an important interaction, rules of engagement, why is like a Wrath of the Skies control deck not big? Okay, it's probably not big because the thing you want to be answering with Wrath of the Skies, the deck will have like strong resiliency so it can play a long game. That's probably, I don't know, like Boros Energy. It has the Flage to rebuild after it gets Wrath against control. And also, like every threat they will play, Ocelot, Guide, will be so threatening that you would probably need to re-answer those after a Wrath.
Yeah.
So what this means is the format, or the strategy of using Wrath of the Skies is good when it's surrounded by a combo finish. So temporary lockdown with a combo finish.
Yeah.
Wrath of the Sky with a combo finish. Because it uses Wrath of the Skies as a bridge to bridge towards a strong end game that cannot be beaten by these decks. So I'd say, okay, so that's the pattern I can translate from Omni to Gorios. Okay, what decks did Omni struggle against? So it was blue black. It was against Stonebrain if you didn't have the cyber threats. So I'll translate that to modern. Okay, so Gorios is probably bad against blue black frog because it's a tempo deck against your combo deck. And it's probably bad against surgical extraction or super cheaply costed graveyard hate, unless you have a sidestepping cyborg plan. So that's how I will try and translate and amalgamate with the actual knowledge of the format. Doesn't make sense to have a creature sideboard plan because Leyline of the Void is, or surgical extraction is very popular. No? Okay, I probably don't need to respect that as much. Is Blue Black Frog popular? Yes. Okay, I probably need to shift away from the combo and play a more fair mid-range game with certain hate cards against Blue Black. Or does siding out Wrath of the Skies in certain matchup make sense because the aggro deck or the fair deck will shift towards a control deck. That's what Corey did against Omni, and like the VV version of Omni of Blue Red, Omni would trim like temporary lockdown.
Yeah.
So does that make sense against energy? Yes or no? I think it's things like that, recognizing analogies and recognizing the actual format, and then once that's done, you do the actual practical reps. You try certain plans, you try certain cards, and then once that's done, you try and map out your deck. So against this matchup, I'm taking out 6 cards and I'm bringing in only 4. Okay, I'm probably missing 2 cards, or I'm probably cutting too many cards.
Yeah.
I'll probably need to adjust my sideboard. Oh, against, I don't know, Amulet Titan, I'm bringing in 10 cards, but I'm only cutting 5 cards. Okay, am I overboarding here? Am I over-respecting? What's the case? I think it's then fine-tuning and adjusting the numbers will be the last step.
I think as well, Dan, when we look at a deck like Living End, where you have such a emphasis on the combo. I mean, you can cast 4-mana stuff, but let's say an emphasis on the combo, like Living End is particularly is one of those sort of decks where like, how much can I board out before I'm just watering down the deck to the point where I just can't. It's not even like it's not powerful enough to keep up with whatever my opponent's doing.
So that's something I've struggled with is it's not coming up with a sideboard. I'd like to praise myself on my sideboard crafting. It's just the sort of like the plan on how you take certain cards out and bring certain cards in for those certain matchups. So Josh, you spot on with Living End. You don't want to take too much out because then you are just watering down the combo. But then at the same time, you can. So in certain matchups, if you're bringing in too much and you're overboarding in a way, then you can sort of trim down on some of your combo pieces. So say trim a Living End, trim an Ardent Plebe, so on and so forth. But that's something that I struggle with. So an example, I was playing an RCQ not last weekend before in Preston. I was playing against one of the Chad Magic teams, Stefanos. He was on Black White Blink, and I brought in Clarion Conquerors because it doesn't. It's a threat, it's a body, and it turns off stuff like Emperor Bones. It turns off Relica Progenitus. It turns off Ashiox. It turns off a lot of problem cards that I don't want to come up against. And then sort of after the game, a few people came up to me and was like, "Why did you bring them in? Why did you not play this instead?" I was like, so I explained exactly that, and it was like, not sure on that. So I don't know whether I've like big brained it or if I've just done something completely wrong. But that's something that I've constantly struggled with is what to bring in and what to take out.
I think finding other utility in your cards, thinking outside the box, is actually quite good.
Yeah.
An example of this is Consigned to Memory. So Consigned to Memory is a card where you bring in specifically for like your Eldrazi decks. You play it for your K-Command decks, your colorless decks. But it also has text against a lot of other things. Your Amulet Titans, it can stop key triggers. Against Glorious Vengeance, it can stop key triggers. Against your Flicker decks, I found it really good against the Flicker decks because you can often exile is often removal against them. And I think these cards you wouldn't necessarily put in your sideboard for these matchups, but as you've done with the Clarion Conqueror, you found an additional use for these cards, which happen to be good in certain situations and stack up as them doing a different role. So for Consigned to Memory specifically in the Blink matchups, it's as good as removal. For Clarion Conqueror in the Living End matchup, it would be as good as an additional threat. With some relevant text, but you wouldn't necessarily put that card in for that matchup. It's just there because it's just there so you can utilize it. So and that's sort of like sideboarding. I say sideboarding on vibes, but where you can have a sideboard plan written out, but it's a guide, not a rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that's the whole thingy. So, lads, any more on theory crafting versus reps? I think we unanimously agree that you need a bit of both, but some.
Yeah, like your previous point about like finding or like big braining yourself. For example, the Clarion Conquerors, or for example, like having consigned to memory, having extra text. I would say a big thing about these utility or overlap cards that you can bring in. There's two sides. One is you have to try and contextualize that card in the game. Does it make sense? For example, the Clarion Conqueror. Does it make sense as the living end player bringing in a creature against black white? Okay, black white. If they don't have a lot of cards, they maybe trim solitudes here or there. So they're probably gonna go down on removal. So in that sense, it would make sense. Whereas, for example, the consigned to memory. For example, a blue-black frog deck bringing in consigned to memory against certain decks will probably make sense, but as like a combo deck, like as a Goryo's deck, will it make sense? That's a bit more tricky and contextual, because unlike a fair deck where your sideboarding in and out can be more dynamic, let's say. Sideboarding with a combo deck, same with Clarion Conqueror and Living End. Sideboarding with a combo deck will have its opportunity cost of diluting the deck. So it's then realizing within the context of the game, is the risk of diluting the deck making sense or not? Is it necessary for me to do this because the matchup is A, so good, or B, so bad? And does it make sense to do this in certain situations because you expect your opponents to sideboard in a certain way? So I think these actually contextualizing and having a concrete reasoning behind, a dynamic sideboard is much easier to be done with reps to back it up. So another important aspect to why reps is so important, because these theory crafting, like this what we've done here with consigned to memory Clarion Conqueror is theory crafting.
Yes.
So then it's the actual providing the evidence. So yeah, that in itself was a great example.
Yeah. Cool. I could talk about Glorious Vengeance all day. I could talk about consigned to memory being ephemerate at home in Glorious Vengeance as well. We'll move on to that. I'm going to release a Glorious Vengeance video separately to this podcast. But any final thoughts, lads, before we sort of wrap things up?
Oh, all good.
Great. Myra, thank you so much for coming on again. I'm sure this won't be the last time. I really enjoy having you on. It's such a good conversation. Dan, I'm sure I'll have you on again.
Maybe.
Your pretty face is nice to look at. So, Dan, do you want to do the obvious for me?
Absolutely. So, ladies and gentlemen watching at home, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this podcast with your friend, with your family, with anyone that you care about or don't care about. We want your subscribers, okay? Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. We've not got any listener questions this week, so there'll be a link in the description. Click on it, ask us a question, leave your name, and we'll answer it the next time we're on. I think that's it. Yeah.
Myra, do you want to plug your social media? How to help people if want to ask you questions about anything? If that's okay, where can we find you?
So I'm predominantly on Twitter or X. My handle is at MYRA00_MTG, Myra00MTG. And I do coaching. I write guides on Unity League. I also will be on podcasts and interviews quite often, since I have a lot of students in Japan that are also influencers. So you might see me here and there. But yeah, for any messages, questions, just feel free to send me a DM and I'll reply And yeah, so please follow me on X. And yeah, just shout out to my sponsor, UltraPRO,
Very good
UltraPRO
sponsor.
family. Thanks
UltraPRO
for
family.
having me on again. And yeah, just shout out to UltraPRO, Unity League, that's been doing an awesome job hyping up the European competitive scene. Shout out to Worldly Council as usual for being just an amazing community and team to be part of. And shout out to you guys. Thanks so much for having me back on. It was really, really, you know, chill the way we
Yeah.
organized it.
Yeah.
Sounds cool. Hop on.
Yeah.
And
That's it. That's
yeah,
what we do.
I
Free
love
format.
hanging out with you guys. So hope to be back on soon.
Could I ask Myra for something to make me happy?
Yeah.
Could you say thank you everyone for watching in Japanese, please?
ご視聴ありがとうございました。
Yeah! Arigato. I probably butchered that. Cheers, everybody. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Yeah.